Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the River Falls Public Library, Rivers of Poetry. Tonight we have three poets who are going to open the event, and then we're going to open it to the community for an open mic. If you didn't see the sign-up sheet in the back, go ahead and sign up at any point. It looks like we've got about 10 spots. If you want me to pass it around, I can do that as well. I just want to draw your attention to a couple events we have coming up. First of all, this event tonight is in celebration of Earthfest. Yay, happy Earthfest! We're celebrating all week, but the big community event is this Saturday, April 22nd, fingers crossed, at Glen Park. Otherwise, it's going to be inside at the University Center. If any of you were there last year, it was kind of windy, but it was still earthy. So anyway, we're hoping for decent weather. Otherwise, it will be inside. One other quick plug. We have a experiential journaling class that's happening this Thursday, and there are 4 open slots. So if any of you are interested in taking that free class, you can talk to me about it, or you can just register. But go ahead and stop and talk to me if you're interested. Or give a call to the library if you're online watching. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first poet tonight, Leslie. Leslie Thomas, an Afton, Minnesota resident, has coordinated a creative writing project dedicated to the Mississippi River with a nonprofit organization. Her poetry was included in Bellwin Conservancy's A Recent History of Poetry at Bellwin. She holds an MSc in Environmental History from the University of Edinburgh. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me back there? Okay. All righty. And thank you, Thomas, for organizing this event and inviting me to be a part of it. And many thanks to the River Falls Library for hosting. I'm excited to be here with all of you tonight. The last time I read my poetry here, it was for Earth Day on April 22nd, 2019, BC, before COVID. Feels like much longer than 4 years ago. The poems I'm reading tonight are on the themes of rivers, landscape, climate change, and family. My first poem is one I recently finished. Synergy. Hardly anything in nature is straight. I'm reminded of this while flying over the Yukon Territory on a clear day. From 30,000 feet, I trace the alternating keyhole-shaped outline of a stream. Disconnected half-moon scars tell a story of an old watercourse carving this landscape. Scroll bars clock the passage of time. Is this how all rivers want to be? Wild, meandering to the ocean, spreading wide. Unconstrained curves serpentine into more curves, held within a floodplain of their making. A swift flow erodes the soil on one side, while a silty ladle adds to the other. Repeating this motion over and over, an oxbow lake is born and a new biome rises. Ground and water completely in sync, like the fullness of a mother's breast responding to her infant's thirst. My poetry explores changes over time in nature and human experience. I love reading old diaries and sifting through files at history centers. I'm informed and inspired by this writing. My next poem began in Bellwin Conservancy's restored prairie in Oak Savannah. It starts with a diary entry by Mitchell Jackson, written from his farm in Lakeland, Minnesota, about 15 miles away from here, in 1854. Jackson wrote, on June 24, 1854, Some of these flowers must be preserved, not that they can ever be made any more beautiful or arranged with any better taste than now. But this great prairie flower garden, as arranged by the hand of the Creator, is now exposed to the plow, and the lowing herds are already making their paths and selecting their shades and watering places. And it is plain that the native beauty must give way to the artificial. Restoring prairie. You were right. We plowed so well, we stripped the earth of nearly everything life-giving. But today, close to your old farm, prairie ironweed blooms purple flowers. Their tall stems and pointed leaves announce a ground in transition again. Corn and Kentucky bluegrass have long withered my senses. In those fields, birds don't sing like they do here. Now I understand why it was hard to say goodbye to flowers, so long to prairie chickens dancing. Mitchell, did you cry when the last roots ripped from the tip of your shovel, heavy with black soil clinging on? And what will we write for the seeds too late to save? For them, I grieve. Among autumn's big blue stem, drunk in coppery red, as wind swirls cotton tops off open milkweed pods. I bow to the bitter acorns, anchoring to the ground, forage only forgiveness under wide bur oak arms. Across the Midwest, historic barns, I'll get this right, are vanishing. I've always been drawn to these structures, imagining the work and life that was once there. My next poem was inspired by an old barn I used to drive by every day. You know this barn, the one overgrown by brush and barely standing, on 40 acres. The engine followed oxen's heavy cue, buffalo's buoyant prairie print, the conveyor belt grind of glacial ice, metal tines twirling on rubber tires, crush, clod, and clay. Disc chiseled stalks mix with manure and NPK. In a corner, red paint clings to heart pine. The old barn sinks into switchgrass, goldenrod, and common buckthorn. They followed the iron horse in 1868 from coast to coast, always a step behind. Now, ghosts ring dinner bells, fling open doors, dream inside this falling frame. Against rows and rows of corn, their voice remains. I wrote my next poem after my beloved dog passed away. He was my loyal trail companion, beloved family member, and one of my best friends. Where are you used to for Kobuk? Each pocket holds a stale treat. My car has 3 leashes in the back seat. Gold shimmers in wool where you used to lie. Anxious prints are still on the sliding glass door, but walks are numbered now. First, second, third, after. On the Kinnickinnick Trail alone, arms swing hands strangely untethered. My gait is lumbered. I learned these paths through you. A narrow depression calls. I wade through dead leaves and dense gray stalks of last year's sedges. You love the spring mud. I follow deer scat to a fast-moving stream, sit on a fallen silver maple. Branches span from bank to main current. I think we belong to this riparian margin, its ephemeral gurgle. You are like this old bark, altering flow, afterlife. Soon, purple-stemmed aster and marsh marigold will rise from loam. The secret trail less traveled will smother in prairie cordgrass and big blue stem. At our wooden bench, overlooking the broad river valley, it's quiet. I imagine you seated near, scanning the horizon, the air for scent. Ears perk as trumpeter swans honk. Canadian geese take flight, yipping in altitude. Whistling yellow warblers sing loud and clear. To your pitch, I will write. My next two poems are about climate change. The first one falls under the call to action category. It was inspired by those last few snow patches that cling onto shady spots each spring. I imagined one was the last bit of snow ever to be seen on Earth, melting right in front of me. Winter's last act. Inside swollen soil pores, dissolve is still river destined, and sun bears down hotter as enemy. The final seasonal showing evaporates. Land glaciers surrender to lake. Freestanding ice slivers have nothing left to cleave, sink unconstrained into ocean. Cargo ships redirect their course further north to brown earth cracks along shorelines. A curtain draws, a sea of cell phones light for an encore that's always come before. I lie into the melted remains. As water rises, cold words will vanish from dictionaries. I started my next poem a few years after reading that not only had we reached 400 parts per million carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, but that we'd likely never dip below this level again in our lifetime. That got me thinking about the ways I've changed to reduce my carbon footprint and the many ways in which I still haven't. Do I tell her? In 1832, at 285 parts per million carbon dioxide, great-great-grandfather is born on an edge of Ireland to waves lapping, blanket bog, and seaweed cling to coarse-grained stone. In 1883, at 290 parts per million CO2, great-grandmother, eroding like the soil from her island home, escapes upheaval on Earth's crust, boards a steamship for new ground. 1905, 300 parts per million CO2. Grandfather is born in St. Paul. His dad pounds track along the river. His mom cooks for James J. Hill. Railroad engines rattle babies to sleep inside their sooty shack. 1962, 318 parts per million CO2. Dad sells cars in Chicago, teaches mom to smoke a Marlboro inside their Pontiac Tempest. I am born to Peter, Paul, and Mary singing, "Where have all the flowers gone?" 1988, 348 parts per million CO2. I trade my bicycle for a Honda Civic. Ice cores extracted from Lake Vostok confirm as CO2 rises, temperature follows. A blue-eyed boy pulled from me inhales his first breath. 1989, 351 parts per million CO2. Scientists warn a threshold is passing. My second son arrives while his dad welds pipeline breaks in Prudhoe Bay. 8 weeks on, 2 off. I swap my Civic for a Chevy Suburban. 2000, 372 parts per million CO2. Veins swell across Wales, Mozambique, inside me. While my husband brings motor parts and Happy Meals to remote landing strips in Alaska, I deliver another person to the planet. 2019, 415 parts per million CO2, a level unknown to Homo sapiens. Following my family's greasy tread, I grow organic potatoes and sell charter time on private jets to pay for natural gas. In 2070, between 400 to over 800 parts per million carbon dioxide is predicted. My great-great-granddaughter finds this poem fading inside a 100-year-old book telling of global warming. Do I tell her, stay on the grid and in the grind, what I know? After surviving a forgotten famine between 1879 and 1882, my destitute Irish family emigrated from Connemara, Ireland to St. Paul in 1883 through an assisted emigration program established by a Quaker. They were amongst the poorest residents of St. Paul and lived at the lowest elevation along the Mississippi River and Phelan Creek, near where it once drained into the Mississippi. Later, Phelan Creek was buried for railroad construction, and my family's neighborhoods were demolished in the 1950s and 60s to make way for an exit ramp off Highway 94 and an industrial park. Today, one of their old neighborhoods has become an urban oasis within Sweet Hollow Park and the restored Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary. As part of the restoration project, portions of Phelan Creek have been daylighted, with more sections to follow. My next poem begins with an excerpt of a letter written by one of my first generation of Minnesota-born relatives named William. I found his letters at the Minnesota Historical Society in a dusty file labeled Minnesota State Training School for Boys, Inmate Case Files and Commitment Papers. He is explaining to a judge why he dropped out of school at age 9. I was moved by his eloquent writing and the restored beauty of the place he lived. In 1912, William wrote, "At school, I wasn't happy. Why, you may ask? Because I was a child of the slums, unmannered, ill-bred, badly attired. I knew I was not one of them." Grasping the baton. Weary yet resilient, like the seaweed they harvested off rented strips of rock and water, a family cleaved from ragged shore. With hope stowed, folktales cast away, trust was placed on the Atlantic. Settling by a muddy river, they swept dirt off city streets, laid railroad ties, and watched St. Paul grow tall around them. High bridges arching to dreams they stored in root cellars for their children's grandchildren. Why, you may ask? Because hunger ebbs slowly from the hollow. Here at Restored Sanctuary today, between bluff and concrete pillar, hawks soar, and Juneberry thrives, where there was once bull thistle. Sun welcomes a daylit stream, and I feel the umbilical of glacial melt. With gratitude, mallet, and chisel, I engrave into aged wooden trestle. Dear Uliam, writer of poverty, son of resistance, you are one of me, and we belong. Shortly after I finished this poem, I had the unexpected opportunity to work with the St. Paul Parks and Recreation Department on their Sweet Hollow Park interpretive sign project. Connemara Patch, the neighborhood where William lived, now has a sign to commemorate the families from Connemara who settled in St. Paul. There's no doubt in my mind that William had a hand in this. My last poem is on a much lighter note. Are there any pilots here tonight? So I love airplanes. And maybe that's not right to say on an Earth Day celebration, but I always have. And I learned to fly 25 years ago. During that time, I spent a great deal of time watching birds, more than I ever have before. Fledging the nest. You make it look so easy. Leading edges, flirting with air. I think I'm ready. Unfold a creased checklist from my back pocket. 1. Carburetor heat, full rich. 2. Gauges green. 3. Flaps in place. 4. Heart fluttering with acceleration. Between thrust and drag, you, confident above your nest. Me, anxious at the runway edge. A pulse spins the propeller. Knuckles knock the yoke. Landing gear tucks into torso. Our wings spread wide, soloing at last. Thank you very much. Thank you. This is too short of an intro for Thomas Smith. Thomas R. Smith is an internationally published poet, essayist, editor, and teacher. His work has appeared in numerous anthologies in the US, Canada, and abroad. He is author of 9 books of poems, including Windy Day at Cabacona, New and Selected Prose Poems, and Storm Island. He has also edited several books, most recently Airmail, The Letters of Robert Bly, and Thomas Transtromer. And he teaches poetry at the Loft Literary Center in Minneapolis and posts poems and essays at thomasrsmithpoet.com. Come on up.
Thank you. Wow. That was so amazing. The history and the science that is just so effortlessly folded into Leslie's poems. I'm really wowed. Thank you. So, I am mostly reading poems in honor of the rivers and the earth, but I need to start out with a poem that's completely off subject. I've been waiting literally for months for an opportunity to read this in River Falls. And it's an elegy. It's for a man named Jeremy Davis, who we lost at the end of last December. He worked at Brook House. He was a wonderful musician and an instrument repairman par excellence, and my guitar owes him big time. So this is called For Jeremy Davis, Who Healed My Guitar. Jeremy sealed cracks the cold, dry winter air had split in the top of my Alvarez, lowered the action such that a professional musician friend exclaimed over the ease of its play. In his trademark Fender guitar cap, Jeremy registered my praise in his modest way, quietly pleased. Now the news that Jeremy died last night, age 47, 30th of December. Take note, no guarantee, no warning. What happened to him could happen to anyone. I saw Jeremy at the co-op buying his morning coffee in the last week of his life, but of course didn't know it. Nobody ever does. Now who will seal the crack his passing has shot through the grain of our communal life? My healed instrument won't stop singing the sound of the good he gave. So that that has needed to be said for a while. This is a poem by a wonderful contemporary Irish poet, Brendan Kennelly. And I discovered when I was in Ireland about, let's see, when was that? That was about 7 years ago, that Kennelly was probably arguably the most loved living Irish poet at the time. He died recently, but this is one of his poems. I think it's called As April Begins. It's hard to tell from the online source, but that's what it seems to be, As April Begins. April is a generous month, she said. Generous rain, light singing birds. Even a mean heart acknowledges the bond linking grass to clouds, linking what we know of here to the blue tingling world beyond. I've seen mean hearts turn generous. So why should I limit myself to being only what I think I know, when I might dream of another me? The year is taking shape, and so am I. I think I'll go for a stroll with hope. When I walk through the April light, I see a gentle twig is more durable than a stubborn tree. Brendan Kennelly. Okay. So I think almost most of the rest of these poems are about we're born of the land around here, around River Falls, the Kinnickinnick River. There are a lot of them are springtime poems too. This is called Chrysalis in Springtime. Along the path, there's a chrysalis in the low bushes, attached to the underside of a bowed branch. Its pale gray purse shelters a silk moth pupa undergoing its slow transformation, which one day, under cover of a new season's leaves, will release that winged being into the light. Meanwhile, the snows have barely left us and may yet return. Meanwhile, the cold rain gives the papery pouch a subtle sheen. Meanwhile, who knows what dream of flight quickens toward awakening in that bed of miracles? That simpler life's faith in its belonging to the universe staggers me passing by. I, with my large wingless body and my own dream of transformation, passing this holy sleeper in the vast patience of early spring. And isn't spring patient? Hasn't spring been patient these last weeks? Oh my God. So here we are. We're almost at Earth Week. I mean, we are at Earth Week. We're almost at Earth Day, April 22nd. I happen to be some kind of hanger-on student in 1970 on the very first Earth Day. So this poem is a memory of that first Earth Day in River Falls. It was a different country, a different Earth. Nixon had signed the Clean Air Act, and we were still running on the fumes of Woodstock the summer before. Our Senator Gaylord Nelson, Wisconsin's pride, inaugurated April 22nd as a day to honor the planet. It should have been every day, every day. I persuaded our student newspaper to let me edit a supplement. We all wrote for it. The New River Falls Ecology Action. Jim, Phil, Eugene, Margil, and Dirty Bill reprinted Gary Snyder's Smokey the Bear Sutra, quote, may be reproduced free forever, unquote, for which Peggy crafted a marvelous drawing of a globe-clutching Mother Earth with her hand out, holding a car at bay. It was a beautiful day for cleaning up the Kinnickinnick. We hauled tires and bottles, boots, a section of picket fence, and even an old bed spring from the river behind the movie theater. Hippies helped police raise the flag in the park. We sent big thanks and smiles to Mother Earth that day. 8 months after Woodstock and 2 weeks before the murders at Kent State sent us all back into the shadows, still holding close the earth, our sustenance, our mother, our lifeline. Let's see. Well, Leslie and I have had some poet adventures together, and one of the ones that really stands out in my memory is she organized and hosted. Was that last year or was it the year before? I think it was last year, wasn't it? The little poets retreat at Bellwind Conservancy. Was it 2 years ago? Oh, okay. Can't remember. They all blur together. But anyway, Bellwind Conservancy, if you don't know it, is this wonderful place over kind of north of Afton. It's really, you just get off I-94 and go south a couple of miles and you're there. It's fabulous. It's a fabulous place. It's rather similar to Carpenter Nature Center. But I hadn't been familiar with it, and she had a bunch of us poets over there, and we just wandered around and wrote all day, and eventually had a little reading to celebrate that. But this is a poem I wrote on that retreat. It's called Earth Star, and it's about the kind of fungus that's called Earth Star. Do you know this thing that I'm thinking of? It kind of looks like a starfish wrapped around a puffball. After late April rains, beside the path, it spreads starfish arms on a wet last year's leaves beneath a bare oak. Dark rays mosaicked with white. At its center, a sodden, collapsed bulb. Give it away as fungus. What endlessly strange and wondrous forms we take on this planet. At a touch, it comes loose, as if it was never attached. Lifting it, I find curled in its shelter, a small worm, seen by a human being this one and only time before set back down on Earth. It regains a hiddenness that has, so far, saved its life. Yeah. It's kind of like a lot of us. stay hidden to save our lives. Let me take a look at the time there. Okay. Got time for a couple of more. So over across the river downtown behind the movie theater, in case you don't know about this, there's some old railroad trestles from when the railroad came through River Falls. Behind one of those trestles is a kind of a backwater pond. And if you know when to look there, you can see massive snapping turtles mating there in the spring. Matter of fact, that's about to happen, I think, any time now, especially if it stays warm and we don't get another blizzard. So this is yeah, I know. It's it's kind of a bitter laugh, but it's very funny what nature's been doing to us lately because of what we've been doing to it. This is called Turtle Amour. Morning in the backwater pond around the old railroad trestle footing. An archaic armor tilts, tail end up, then slides heavily down against some unseen resistance in the shallow, mucky water. We can't take our eyes off the snappers rolling slowly sideways in their black turning embrace. A head suddenly visible or a clawed flipper raised dripping in air as if waving. Not drowning, thank you, but loving in their splashy manner, knocking up against each other with the clacking of shells, serrated tails whipping, reddish yellow throats glistening, their pleasure such work to get at each other through that bony encumbrance. Though managing, as they've done even in the scummiest sloughs for millions of years, that there may be turtles in springtime tumbling in the waters of the world. It's Turtle Amour. I'm going to read a new poem about one of my heroes, one of my environmental heroes. Where did I put that? Oh, yeah, that's in here. Okay. And that hero is Rachel Carson. Rachel Carson in the early 60s blew the whistle on the pesticide manufacturers and also on the nuclear weapons industry. So I'd read a biography of Rachel Carson by William Souter, Minnesota writer. I think it's called To the Farther Shore, something like that. But it's a biography of Rachel Carson, and I was touched by his account of her death. So I started writing about it, and this is called The Death of Rachel Carson, which took place on April 14th, 1964. That mid-April day, your dear friend Dorothy wrote of her great sense of peace, thinking of you, wondering how you felt, waking every morning in your modest house in Silver Spring. Surely some part of her knew or suspected the time had come. The books written, the facts defended, your brave work done, left for others to take up. You mostly slept. By sunset, were gone. It was April. The birds you'd stood up for, anything but silent. I like to think they sang you out of the pain, out of this inconceivably teeming world you cared for with a quiet ferocity. None of its creatures, however small, unimportant, many beautiful. And maybe the humble, gifted woman who saw the ocean as a stream of life was herself borne on friendly currents into even stranger, more joyous seas. Okay. I think that's a good one to close with. We're going to call, that's it. That's all I'm going to read. Yes, you can unleash the applause now. Thank you. Thank you. We have a special treat tonight. Hal Watson from River Falls is going to be guiding us through some poems and photographs from a beautiful collaboration he did with the Maine poet, Susan Deborah King. Hal's a photographer, loves nothing more than to disappear into quiet and forgotten corners of the Kinnickinnick River. Watershed, not into the river, into the watershed, where he and maybe the river too, where he and his wife Maggie make a home in western Wisconsin. That's right here. Over the years, he has served on the board of the Kinnickinnick River Land Trust and the River Falls City Council. When not exploring with his camera, he manages geographic information systems for the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. So let's call Hal up here now. Hal Watson.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you everyone for being here. Give me just one moment to set up a little technology. Get this going. How are we looking? All right, great. It's very exciting for me to be here, and I'm thrilled to be able to share the poems and my photographs here in River Falls, where I make my home. Before I get started with the reading part, I do want to introduce you to the poet. I am the photographer, and my partner in this collaboration, Susan Deborah King. Susan King, a Master of Divinity, is a poet and author of several full-length poetry collections, including Bog Orchids, Coven, One-Breasted Woman, and Moon Dance. She has led retreats on creativity and spirituality, taught English and creative writing in a host of institutional settings, and privately has acted as mentor to emerging writers. She lives with her husband in 2 locations on the coast of Maine, the mainland, and an island. I met Susan when I was just out of college in the late 80s. She was already a published poet at the time. I met her through my parents as a family friend, and she kind of welcomed me into her circle. And I was happy to share my photography with her over the years. And Maggie and I followed her career in poetry and went to readings. Our lives intersected when in a more real way when we moved to the Twin Cities, and Susan and her husband also ended up in the Twin Cities. Going back to around 2010, I had been I had been sharing photographs with a circle of friends through the email as Hal's Photo Journal, essentially an early kind of blog type of exercise where I posted or shared a photograph and wrote a little bit about it. And so I got interested in the combination of photography and writing and how those 2 things interacted or could interact together. For me, photography had been, and mostly still is, a pretty solitary pursuit. I've heard that poetry is also a similar kind of a thing. But I felt the need to kind of reach out and do something with someone else. And so I reached out to my friend Susan and said, would you be willing to do some collaboration? And she generously said yes. So we flipped a coin, And it was determined that I was going to be the first one to contribute something. So I presented her with a photograph. The first photograph here is from north central Wisconsin, up on the border of the UP. Though it can't last. The moment just after dawn, when, from nightmares of defection and dread, the world catches its breath. The pond yawns, blue with sky and smooth, reeds standing at high attention along the edges. Time stretches. Do we not long to rest here as if in a sort of cocoon, unbesieged by lists and tasks, our only job to watch the light spread, water given goose flesh by the wind, clouds protean, suggestive, flocks signing the scene in their vanishing script? I wanted to start with that piece because I just think the poem really speaks to where so many of us find ourselves these days. The world of work, the world of raising children, a goal-oriented culture that kind of just has this propensity to turn what should be the simple rhythms of life into a relentless drive towards goals and achievement. And there's nothing wrong with goals and achievement, but sometimes it's nice to rest. Here we go. Ferns. They fist up through frost-gone crust to straight-spined attention. Then uncurl, arcing back as in tango, yoga, or full-fronded now, stipe, blade, pinnae. They bow in forest undercroft, reverent for the floor they sprung from. Deep green, the greenest dreaming wings. This photograph was taken in my front yard in River Falls. So spring's almost here. It will come. And we have ferns in our yard, and they're just, it's fun to really pay attention, to things like that. And they seem to just day by day and even hour by hour, ferns in particular, will change. It's fun. Visiting the source of the Kinnickinnic River. If you're burned out, dried up, and fear there's no hope for revival, try the middle of nowhere. Out of a depression, a kind of swampy gulch from which we would normally step back, through a pillow of green, of cress no below zeros can kill. And in the middle of a simple stubbled field, it bubbles, it foams, it swirls, and it can put you, watching it, into a marveling swound. Low and common, no place seemingly to look for gold. But what else is water? Clean and gushed up from the center of the earth. What we're mostly made of, after all. What we look for on other planets as life's surest sign. How to explain that it just surges at thousands of gallons a minute, that it burbles and whirls and overruns this earthen cup to cut its serpentine course through land, to cut its serpentine course through land, wanting to know it, to penetrate what is dense, to get its fluid feelers into it, and to play the rush and guggle of its music, the perpetual drum brush of its falls, as serenade to the whole surround, a chord flickering silver under cloud. That photograph was taken at the source of the Kinnickinnic River, at the Headwaters Preserve of the Kinnickinnic Land Trust's property, which is north of Interstate 94, just near Roberts. Slowing. Even a river needs to pause, though it cannot completely stop moving. Nothing that lives is ever absolutely still. But sometimes it will slow down to reflect on the trees along its banks, their lush leafage, its surface affording the trees a mirror in which to admire themselves. How could it have missed, rushing past as it is wont to do? What was all that turbulence about? Those sensual green billows leaning over the slightly undulant water so ravishingly. The bliss of being covered even with the image of such luxuriance. What was so important? Why was there such a need for speed? Let it idle for a while. Let it gather strength. A great outpouring might be required downstream. Let it just become blank, become smooth. So all it does is replicate the beauty it has been able to behold and make an offering, and make in this an offering of praise, since it cannot improve on what has been made by it knows not what. What indeed made the waters of which it is composed, or the current that carries it along? In this lull, it wonders. It wonders. That is the Presque Isle River, which again is up at the edge of the UP in north central Wisconsin. Whoops. Let me see if I can figure out where I'm going next here. There we go. This is a one for spring. Pulsatilla. What's left when the flowering's done? When the glamorous purple bloom has withered and blown, leaving bereft tendrils that importune the wind? Is it essentially over? Bloom off the rose? But no. Tendrils are silvered and furred. A bolus emerges, seed head, fruit of all your labors, bursting with words and gestures. Effects that burrow through defenses to take root, grow, burgeon, continue the cycle. So no whining idolization of the blossom, no shrine building for that segment only of the round. It all goes on. For now, focus on the chalice that lifted the flower over Earth's altar. The under-observed, under-prized sepals extending themselves, arcing with grace and bravery into the ether. That's another photograph that was taken right here in River Falls, in town. Beauty is everywhere. You just have to go looking for it. This is an Earth Day appropriate poem, I think. Choices in the Yellow Wood. In the season of dying, once tinsel stems lie like cut down protesters stricken along the road she takes straight into the sun, from whose rays there is less and less protection. Even now it arcs lower. She is facing this, her heart heavy as the imperiled globe. She could run. She could turn and run back into the rapidly disappearing, wished for where she's known. But no, unflinching, with buried hope, she is going the way no one wants to, the way everyone prays will not be the future, as if her going, her resolve to suffer it, could make a difference. That photograph is taken at another Kinnickinnick Land Trust Preserve, the Kelly Creek Preserve, which is a wonderful place just east of here on County J. This photograph is also taken at Kelly Creek, and the prairie there has been restored, and it is absolutely unbelievably fantastic. It's just one of the most diverse prairies really anywhere in our area, certainly within the watershed. First hard frost. As if our wish to hold it right there, the field before collapse, still upright and at its most golden, materialized overnight, and time stopped to glorify in glass, sheathing it with millions of crystalline spicules, summer's wild yield, breathtakingly hoary. As if there's something inherent in the design to give us moments, peaks, when we are at once fully manifest and being ravaged, where all our lives have given rise, where all our lives have given rise to, is lifted up to be beheld, acknowledged, and felt as holy. A freeze frame where our hearts are mantles pulsing with dawn light, kindled as an icon of consummation. I cried when I read that first time. I'm almost through here, but getting towards the end. Whoops. Let me, oh yeah, there we go. This is on the Kinney, on the lower Kinney. If any of you have been down there, you know there's a phenomenon called weeping cliffs. And it's something that happens where the groundwater seeps through the limestone, and as it comes out, it creates a microclimate for ferns and mosses and other flora that love that kind of environment to flourish. Holy water. It's a thirst you didn't even know you had. Will drive you with weak knees down a steep gorge to skid on pine needles, slip on mud, on loose rock, over ledges that narrow to nothing, to stare down certain injury or death. This is the edge where your yawning need is exposed. And you can only proceed if you entrust yourself, allow yourself to be steadied and caught mid-fall. Knowing your companion is vulnerable too. There is no other way to reach the grotto, that rock-walled alcove with its floor of rubble, where the river made a turn and withdrew. There you can stand under a great boulder covered in hanging moss, whose green filters the rock water, whose green filters the water trickling down over the rock, making it clean as it was in the beginning of the world. Look up, open wide, and let those drops rain on your face and into your mouth. Then you can sense the extent to which your life has been in drought. You want this quenching to extend, to cover the whole of your parched ground and make it fertile. But like most such consecrated moments, it transmutes into one of those droplets, crystallized, that you fondle as a talisman against doom. I know Leslie's a fan of the Kinnickinnick or the St. Croix, and I'm going to wrap this up. This was taken on the sand spit at Kinnickinnick State Park, looking upstream on the St. Croix River. Deltoid. There are times when, because we know, like geese, the place we're in has gone cold and darker. An arrow within us gets notched and drawn, and overwhelming the usual debate, stick it out, you'll hurt someone, you don't deserve it, it's scary, points itself to where it feels we'll belong. And without thinking, we release the string, let go the dread tension, and it's aloft and soaring into the blue unknown, with cohorts joining to follow for a while the river's course, not straight, as we've been schooled is good, but winding, winding. Then that spear will veer off, directed by what, in our deepest tissues, we desire. Thank you.
Thank you, Hal. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Leslie. Let's have another round of applause. Thank you. Wonderful. We've got just under half an hour here for some open mic. We've got 4 people signed up. Was there anyone that came in late that still wanted to sign up? Okay, so I've got, all right, so 2 more. So what does that put us at? 20 minutes divided by, Sean James, you want to tell me, do you want to do the math on that one? You're the youngest one in the room. 20 minutes divided by 6 people. Okay, all right. So first, we've got, who signed up first? I'm only reading the signature. What was your name? Dennis. Dennis, welcome, Dennis. Dennis, the camera's over on this side. The camera. We're online. Yeah, sorry. That's all part of the deal.
I do not wish to be on camera. I am Dennis. My first poem that I read in my life, I was 15 years old, was in library science class of one guy, me, and 25 young ladies. I was very unkept at that time. Is that right? Unkept, uncaught, unkept. So 15 minutes after class was over, everyone in high school knew about me. And as I walked through the halls, they would divide and says, "Here comes the poet." I am a retired engineer. After I have carved most of my blockhead engineering off and dropped all the sawdust of my life, I started to write poetry again. My first poem is about a woman. I found her Bible, and inside the Bible was a embroidered handkerchief. So my children would say of me, "You mean those things talk to you? Do you really hear words?" And the answer is yes, I do. I have photographs of the Bible if they could be passed around. I think it was dated somewhere around 1923, and it had other little notes in the Bible. And you can see the kerchief, you would call it, is very creased. It's embroidered. And there's other various notes in the Bible. And for lack of a better way of saying her name, I'm going to call her Anne, A-N-N-E. So I don't bring her name out. So I wrote about her. It's called The Old Embroidered Handkerchief. It was clean and then folded and carefully put away in between the pages of her Bible after she would have prayed. Sewn on the borders with pink flowers of yellow and gold, she would handle it gently, her treasure from days of old. The lines remained across the designs, being folded for many years, as her kerchief would have been there to collect her tears. Was the lady in love? Perhaps it was so. Maybe she knew she had to let go. Both the lady and her kerchief were creased with age, and each day with their Bible, they both turned another page. So that is the story of. I have one more to read.
Okay.
I'll get it done in 1 minute. This is a poem about a memorial. It's called The High Ground. Has anyone been to the High Ground in the High Ground in Neilsville? I wrote the high ground. The high ground, the word is a proper noun, not just high ground. It is built on 170 acres in Neilsville, Wisconsin. I think it is the second highest piece of land in Wisconsin. It has all of the names on plaques. Each person that was lost their life in a war going back, I think, all the way to 1812. And the plaques are there by the thousands and thousands and thousands. So for the World Day of Peace, September 21st, I wrote the poem, The High Ground, and I recite it every year, September 21st at the High Ground. So the title is The High Ground. Take your heart to the high ground and gaze openly. Thank them all for freedom beyond what your eyes can see. Freedom can be fleeting, and for it they gave it all. Now they rest with others as they answered liberty's call. Their bodies may have laid on a distant beach or buried in a small town, but their spirits are forever aloft above the high ground. Okay.
We're gonna switch the order up a little bit. River's gonna go next. We're gonna do a little camera adjustment. Thank you, Dennis. Let's see. I'm gonna move. Oh, there we go. My purse. Okay. There we go. All right. Our next person is, yep, River.
All right, I was gonna stand and then I started going in pain and then I get all shaky. So, but it's much easier to be standing at the podium to do this. So, ceremony at the headwaters of the Kinney. We're on the Kinney. On a water's quest, a steady stream gushes into the open air, leaving the underground behind. Rolling down over crumbled rock, she emerges between banks, a swirling pool of symmetry pulled forward to reunite. Her waters run, carving a course near where we stand, circled in prayer and awe, witnessing a river's birth. Feel the vibrations. 1,000 drums beat the water song. This actually was inspired by a Nibi walk, an indigenous-led ceremonial walk of prayer we did last spring. I'm going to go back in time too, to my name and back to the hippie era. I think of Thomas. Siddhartha and me. It all began in the center of a book back in '73. I was a bud of life, my mom, a literature hippie. Living high in the Rockies, cradled in the nook of a pine, she read about a man's life and how he sat halfway blind along the river's edge, tangled in a web of choice. He wept, washing away the selfish, rekindling his spirit, forever a changed man. My mom sat in the web, folding her story between his words. Settling her hand over me, she climbed down the tree. As her new chapter began, her feet took stance. She knew the name for me. Can you think of what book that was? Yeah. Yep. Okay, this one I think it's called Invisible by Guilt, and I think we most agree that these people are ignored. We are. Children grow up to stories about the Wild West and the fighting Sioux of the plains. They watch John Smith win Pocahontas, Disney style. People see images of an Indian straight off the back of mainstream, believing the stereotypes and fueling the hate. Never seeing the Indian today, never learning the truth or acknowledging the past. It is easy to turn away and believe the Indian is dead, judging people invisible. Yet here we are, standing in line behind you, in a hue of colors and tribal differences. We are people just like you, surviving the daily grind in an ever-changing world. Thank you.
Thank you, River. Jesse, we have Jesse next. Come on up, Jesse. We're going to readjust the camera.
How's it going? Let me say my name. My name is Jesse Whitford. You can find all my stuff on YouTube. I can write down my name for you later. I got a notebook this time, so I'm actually nervous because this is a piece that I haven't done, but I'll start with my other one. This should be really quick. Hills of Zion, men and women crying, they miss the truth. Oh, how we love to hate abuse. Youth looking for direction. This is my impression. Who leads our leaders? Who influences believers? Even in a drought, scripture says cedars will grow. Oceans of love will reach below. Just ask my next of kin, whose name is Jesus, but he's not only Mexican, known as olive skin, but more importantly, defeated sin. Some people think of him as fake and phony, but I assure you, he's nothing short of holy. Waiting on that matrimony. Oh Lord, my King, you leave your peace. Death now has something in common with WWE wrestling and has no sting. Satan got DDT'd in the ring. I stand, all that I am. The one who plans, understands, comprehends my pain. If I didn't struggle, it'd be like saying you died in vain. But the vine is ripe for the taking. Me and Daddy and I decide we tight. Children of God help make me an apostle. Jesus dug me out the dirt like a fossil. The fact that even's at my door is colossal. Boy like Randy Moss, he'd be catching the impossible, which makes it incredible. I love what he says because his bread is so edible. So that was Hills of Zion. This is story of my life. I just wrote this. Thank you. Story of my life. I want to bury this knife, but it comes back to me like a faithful ex-wife. Condemnation, you already paid that price. Shady people putting blame on others. Big salute to my giving mothers, loving their children, not just under covers, veil torn. I don't want to wear Ken-size uniforms, and I will not reform. Sworn to go Jason Bourne when those killer bees swarm. Me and Mia Moore, my bestie, worn together like a warm knit blanket. You want a normal Sunday school attendant with no problems? Yo, I ain't it. I appreciate who I am because I have woken up on pavements and random people's statements. Your boy finally made it out of his mama's basement. So when it got hard, I went back to my ex-wife in the form of an ice pick or a rusty old knife. Attempted suicide. I almost ended this life. I cannot assure this, it may ruin a dead man's pride. Then I would be crucified. Shout out to Jesus Christ that I'm still alive. Yeah, that's great. Been dropping tracks and serpents in the wilderness. Call your boy Jake the Snake. For me and more, that's a piece of cake. This is the ghost part too, but instead of waking up just to survive, no, it's waking up not just to survive, but thank goodness every day I'm alive. Told y'all I'm crucified. The evil dead within no longer strives, but like the movie has Ash as his prize. The ex talks but cannot walk. The Battle of Los Angeles written in chalk. I traded my worst moments for his very best. I even got Miracle with Angels on my chest. My BFF Andrew died of cardiac arrest. Recently, my father was stabbed to death. This is my life. I'm still given my very best. Mi amor, my true love, Jesus Cristo, helps me with all the rest. J-Dub giving props to my main man above, who is fly as a dove. One love. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you. All right. You guys, I can't read your writing. Starts with an M. Maybe Maureen might be. Is it? Oh, yay. Okay. Yep.
Thank you, everybody who's gone. Spring at the prom. Spring came alone to the prom. You couldn't miss her, not in that dress made of snow melt. Every sloped surface glittering, sheets of it shivering under the sun. Her fine, smooth boulders exposed above a wrap of snow. She danced, of course, the river being first to ask for the honor. Two such beautiful women entwined, one feeding the other and destined to change. Even now, wind licks at the wet of her dress. She sometimes tracks snow onto the dance floor or mud. She holds the hummingbird's weary wings. You have flown so far, she says. She approves of the bear's clumsy cubs. Everyone wants her to see how they survived winter's crystalline cruelty, but she hasn't the time, has to leave. Though she keeps coming back. I forgot, she says, and the grass turns greener. I forgot once again, and snow blows in. The beaver couple is crowned prom king and queen. They slap their tails in joy, which scares a mallard nesting near the punch bowl. In all the flapping and quacking, spring slips away. She has done so forever, but still, it seems new. North Pasture. There was a little stream that ran in spring from the swamp above the woods, through the woods, and down a slight grade to the pond. We loved that little creek, the way it bravely set out as the snow melted, weaving wide-eyed among the trees, clear pools forming now and then over last fall's leaves, and then a rivulet escaping to make a small waterfall over an exposed root, the smooth drape of it falling to make a low sound of water on stones. But I loved best where the creek left the trees and slid down a fold in the pasture, and I could see the brown grass combed by this small current waving under the water. For whatever reason, this was springtime to me. After my father tiled the swamp so the water drained faster and he could plow that land, the creek was all business, did not care to be loved. It just had to funnel water to the pond. No more shy twists to get around trees. No more wavering grass underwater like the earth's tawny fur. That was all kid stuff, and this was the future. Dad plowing hard, and the creek running fast.
Thank you, Maureen. Next up, we have Sean James.
Hi, I'm Sean James. I just saw the sign. I walked in here hoping for nothing and literally stumbled upon this room. I'm a huge fan of the theater, the arts in general, but poetry is probably definitely up there, something I enjoy. I just got off of work at McDonald's, so maybe it's a piece of symbolism. Credit where credit's due. I didn't write this poem. It is one of my personal favorites of all time. It just blew me away and shook me to my core when I first watched it be performed on The Moth. It's one of the most popular videos on The Moth of all time. It's on social media right now. That's the wrong website. But it's one that just broke me. It is not a rhyming poem. It is a spoken word piece. The poem is by a fellow named Patrick Roche, and the poem is called 21. 21. My father is run over by a car. He's passed out in the road with a blood alcohol content 4 times the legal limit. I do not cry. 4 months later, the nurses lose his pulse. And I wonder whose life flashed before his eyes. I rewind VHS tapes, old home videos. 20. 19. I haven't brought a friend home in 4 years. 18. My mother sips the word divorce. Her mouth curls at the taste like it burns going down. 17, I start doing homework at Starbucks. I have more meaningful conversations with the barista than I do with my family. 16, I wait for Christmas Eve. My brother and I usually exchange gifts to each other early. This year, he and my dad exchange blows. My mom doesn't go to mass. 15. I come up with a theory that my dad started drinking again because maybe he found out I'm gay. Like, if he can make everything else look blurry, maybe somehow I would look straight. 15. 15. My mother cleans up his vomit in the middle of the night and cooks breakfast for herself in the morning like she hasn't lost her appetite. 15. I blame myself. 15. My brother blames everyone else. 15. My mother blames the dog. 15. Super Bowl Sunday. My father bursts through the door like an avalanche, picking up speed and debris as he falls. Banisters, coffee tables, picture frames, tumbling, stumbling. I find his AA chip on the kitchen counter. 14. Dude, my dad's been sober for, 10, 11 years now? I don't know, man. We don't even think about it anymore. 13, 12, 11. Mom tells me that Daddy's AA meetings are for AA. She asks if I know what that means. I don't. I nod anyway. 10. My parents never drink wine at family gatherings. All my other aunties and uncles do. I get distracted by cartoons and forget to ask why. 9, 8, 7, 6. I want to be Spider-Man. Or my dad. They are pretty much the same thing. 5, 4, 3. I have a nightmare. The recurring one about Ursula from The Little Mermaid. So I get up and I waddle toward Mommy and Daddy's bedroom, blankie in hand, and I pause. Daddy's standing there in his underwear, silhouetted by refrigerator light. He raises a bottle to his lips. 2, 1, 0. When my mother was pregnant with me, I wonder if she hoped, as so many moms do, that her baby boy would grow up to be just like her father.
Thank you, Sean. We have one more person, anonymous. Randy Hoopert.
Okay. I've lived in town all my life, just out in Man Valley. I drive a truck. I sing a lot when I drive. I love lyrics. I like poems. I like melodies too. So one of the things I like to do is put new words to favorite songs. I think you'll be able to pick up the song as I go. And sticking with River's theme, the name of the song is Namakogan. Namakogan, your waters flow straight from heaven. Quiet dreams and simple laughter. The water drifts pure. Oh, you're a cold one, but I know you'll warm up with the seasons. Within oak, pines, and tamaracks, my dreams will flow free. Oh, your banks are full of gold to me. Between your shores, my spirit's free. I know the journey always has to end. Drain 4 counties of Wisconsin, pure blue. 100 miles of nothing to do but dream. Dream and don't forget. Namakogan. Now peaceful water flow under, through sunshine or thunder. You mend my poor soul. And Wisconsin, oh Wisconsin, now that's just real people talking. I know that it's true, so true. Love's the color blue. You freeze up some in a wintertime. The peace held dearly deep in my mind. In springtime, I know how the story goes. Holding, reflecting times of my life. Funny how gray feelings flow away. Flow away. Namakoggin. Bend and turn my direction towards peaceful remission. Drift on to new fate. I may be leaving, but you're still flowing to the sea. I gotta let the river love me. Let the water wash me. I gotta let the river love me before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Thanks to everyone who participated. And thank you to our headliners, Leslie, Thomas, and Hal, for setting this up and inspiring us with a wonderful theme, the river. And happy Earth Week. We'll see you all on Saturday, possibly at the Earth Day celebrations. Thanks, everyone.